Let's give it 5 to 10 minutes for just kind of time in case anybody wants to listen to this live. We'll see how it goes. Oh, there's people. Okay. It's like people show up when I hit the start event button, and that's like what they're waiting for or something. That's like, oh, that's it. Oh, we're starting.
Wild.
Okay. Yeah, that's weird. Yeah, super cool. So I'm gonna give everyone a few minutes. I'm gonna give about 5 minutes for people to just come in. It looks like everybody abandoned us in short order.
Oh no.
Oh no! Damn. Now that feels bad. Okay, that's okay. That's okay. I'm gonna give people 5 minutes, and then we'll start. So
Sounds good. So are we anticipating anybody else from the team joining us? I think she muted herself.
Oh, yeah, I was totally talking like I was unmuted. Yeah, so I think Yorsi might show up, but I'm not quite sure. I got kind of a mixed. I didn't get it for sure. I would love for Yorsi to be on this panel, but I don't know if Yorsi's gonna be able to show up. So we'll see.
Okay, well, cool. I will. Let's see. So I figured we'd go into this like what am I trying to say? Basically, like for intending it for it to be consumable for people who are new to the project. So if it's all right, I'd like to introduce everybody that's on the call and ask about what they've worked on the project.
Yeah, Alex is in the in the audience as well.
Yeah, Alex, if you want to speak, you don't have to. I did invite you to speak if you'd like to like jump up here. But that's up to you. Maybe Alex is not in a good place to speak. That's fine. But yeah, so I want to go last. Nat, go first.
Oh, hi. I'm Nat, lead designer on this. I've been mostly taking on the role of like developmental editing and finishing editing so far. So on Tower of Atonement, I did some structural edit passes and some mechanics design. That was pretty hot, pretty fun. But outside the project, I'm a professional GM, and I do freelance writing for this and also some other groups like MCDM, for instance, third-party 5e stuff.
Very cool. Can I follow up on? Let's see. You mentioned some mechanics design. So having dug through the Tower of Atonement, can you give us some more details on what you worked on specifically?
Yeah. So to give kind of a structural start to what that adventure looked like, VJ and Friday took the first pass at it, did the rough design, put a lot of ideas down, and for me it was the stat blocks and the layer actions primarily that I applied some coats of paint to. And like this thing was a good idea, but we need to reword it to actually make it work in the game. This is cool, but maybe this needs a mobility option because high level player characters can do a lot of crap. These DCs need to be adjusted. How about this idea? A lot of me went into those stat blocks, although the initial design was primarily VJ.
All right. Well, that's really cool. Yeah, I think the lair actions specifically, like those have a lot of interesting ideas in there. They feel very thematically appropriate for the creatures. And yeah, it's clear that you've put some thought into like the monster design here on how this is going to interact with high level players. How are you going to keep them busy? There's a lot of stuff in here that encourages like clever thinking and careful movement and things like that. Like none of the monsters in Tower of Atonement are going to be, a run up and kick it in the shins until it falls over situation.
Yeah. And I, as a personal GM, I have a lot of more experience than the average GM learning tier 3 and tier 4 play. It's something that was one of my strengths. So when I bring that to high level monster design on the regular, there's lots of things I can point out like, that's a wonderful idea, but this monster does nothing. And that's not specifically talking about what we started with for these designs, but more for just like a lot of monster design in general. At high level, I find a lot of designers don't really know what to do with the high level monster designs.
Yeah, I can definitely see that being a problem. Like 5e isn't notorious for the monsters being super interesting all the time. And even at high levels, you do have those things like, oh, it's CR12 and its only action is multi-attack.
Yeah, on the flip side, even if the monsters are interesting, the average GM is often not great at driving those higher tier monsters. So being somebody who actually specializes in that and knows what makes that combat interesting, I think that could add a lot of value to a project like this.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But should we continue through introducing the rest of our crew?
VJ, why don't you tell us what you worked on?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is VJ. I worked on I also worked on the Tower of Atonement with Friday, and I did the initial pass on the monster design for our actual BBEG Ashland, which was a fun little time. And outside of doing this, I also professionally run games and also contribute to a number of third-party 5e companies, including MCDM as well. But yeah, just had a really great time with Tower of Atonement. Especially, it feels like it has a lot of Catholic guilt in it in some places, which I'm not actually Catholic. I'm Baptist, or was, so it's not my brand of Christian guilt, but it was fun to do some Christian guilt stuff that I didn't have to then unpack later on. Like, oh man, I should think about this as a Catholic, because I am not. But like Nat was saying, there was a lot of high level design that went into making the stat blocks, making sure they work. And Nat did have to come in at a bunch of places and just point out for me. It was like, oh yeah, these need tweaking here and there. But overall, the design of the adventure and the actual stat blocks was a pretty fun time.
Yeah, I sat down with VJ when we were initially conceiving of this adventure, and we were talking about it and kind of figuring out what we wanted to do. And we were like, okay, so we have this concept, we have this NPC, the Confessor, written by Kiana Shaw. Kiana Shaw said that she might be able to stop by for at least 30 minutes to talk a little bit. But so I won't talk too much about the Confessor, but we were trying to figure out what sort of thematic adventure can we design around this NPC to really highlight them, and then also make it fun for the players to try something new and different. And we knew that we wanted high level play, so that was why I went to people with the experience working for Arcadia and Flea Mortals, and VJ and Nat as the designers on this adventure.
All right, that's very cool. Let's see. So I skipped this part, but I should probably introduce myself. Hi, everyone. I'm Tyler. I'm here from the RPGbot.podcast. If you're not familiar with RPGbot, we're known for character optimization and talking about mechanics and stuff. Randall is here with me, my podcast co-host.
How's it going? I'm Randall. Yeah, I think that stuff carried a lot of weight in there. There's a lot of things that we talk about. Yeah, it's awesome to join everybody.
Also, we have Dave here. Dave. Dave, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yes.
Yeah, Dave, what did you work on?
I just enjoy listening. That's right. I'm Dave. I'm a writer. I mostly part-time. I'm involved in some LARP stuff in the UK, where I'm from. I don't know if you can tell. But for the project, I was working on some history beats for the Vineyard itself, talking about what they did before they became the Vineyard, especially Aisling. Also covering some of the nasty, nefarious plots they got up to, and how they maintain their power in the present day, controlling necromancy. And like a lot of other contributors, I also wrote up a dossier for one of the lieutenants as well of the Vineyard.
Can you tell us which one?
Yeah, go ahead, Dave. You can talk about it.
Okay, that's cool. I wrote my lieutenant's called the Pallor, which is sort of a weird take on the concept. It's kind of like The Thing meets sort of a sentient fungus. So the Pallor is they were a herbologist perhaps in the past who, through a ritual, managed to put their mind into effectively a giant garden of undead fungus, which now infests bodies brought into it and can put them as agents of the Vineyard, for better or worse. It's a bit of a stranger take on the idea of a boss enemy, I suppose you could say, one that can sort of scale to different levels from depending on who it's animating or if it's the garden itself. But yeah, it was fun to try and bring in some different horror beats into the concept.
Awesome, cool. So I want to ask a question. We talked about a couple ideas. I've heard folks talk about the Vineyard. I've heard folks talk about the Tower of Atonement as an adventure. Yeah, let's start. What is the Vineyard? What should folks expect as they step into the Vineyard? Or if I'm a DMGM hoping to hop into this at home, what should I be looking to? Why am I going to be excited about this space?
So one of the major design concepts that we had when we first conceived of the Vineyard RPG, me and M. Ebel, my co-creator, was we were looking to resolve a problem that we found in most RPG books for tabletop, in that a lot of the time the villains either had no focus in the actual written material, and everything was very player focused. So we wanted to build an entire structure around creating a really great villain organization that would be supported by the text. And what we have come up with is an entire antagonist that's both supported by the organization. There's someone who is attempting to reclaim their place as the undead god of secrets. We have some high tier enemies. We have some low tier enemies. We have pretty expansive villain dossiers for each NPC that we primarily sort of focus on. These 8 lieutenants, and then Ashlyn makes 9 NPCs for us. It's not just the paragraph that you would normally get in an RPG book, where you get like maybe a page for a whole faction. The whole book is about the faction. And this book itself can be planted as a supplement into any of the cities that you currently use as your setting. Maybe it's Waterdeep or somewhere else, like Dreckenheim, and you can sort of add on to instead of take away all the material that we're having, like these 20 different locations, which are beautifully painted by Matt Duckett. Matt Duckett is here. I'd invite you to speak. I'm not sure if you'd like to, but if you want to, you can. I would love for you to talk during the AMA, Matt, if you're cool with that. But yeah, the whole reason that we're building this book was to provide more engaging villains for people, and yeah.
That's awesome. So I'll be honest, it sounds like that's as rewarding for the dungeon master as it is for the players at the table. Hearing a lot of folks here are professional GMs by day. Yeah, how on point is that?
Yeah, so it is meant to be something that you can just sort of pick up, and then if you, for whatever reason, your party takes a left turn, you have material within the book that you can directly like lift from the book and use right away. That's also why we've partnered with Describe, so that you have so much material that's ready for you on hand. We're going to have passages of box text from Describe to either use as plot seeds or interactions, conversations, magic items, narrative descriptions. All of that's really going to be available for you in the book. And in addition to that, you can go super deep or you can go very shallow. So the shallow take is like you open the book, you use it immediately, and it's going to be available to you to use in a convincing way, in a way that's going to be fun for you. Because if you glance over the narrative box text once or twice before you read it, it's going to do you enough justice to still recreate that horror experience for you. Also, Kiana Shaw's here. If we want to talk about the Confessor, hello, Kiana.
Yeah, Kiana, tell us all about the Confessor.
Yeah, so I guess you could say I'm one of the writers for the Vineyard, and I had the pleasure of creating one of the lieutenants, specifically the Confessor. She was featured in the preview adventure. She is, as I like to say, every single thing about religious oppression and puritanical society stuffed into one terrible, terrible person, who also apparently people love her a lot, which has been very fun for me to experience as someone who wrote someone who is irredeemably a bad person. I was like,
Yeah.
I love her.
Kiana?
Please.
Kiana, it's been nothing but adoration for the Confessor. Like everyone, I've ran the Confessor confrontation 7 times now, and everybody's like, I really like the Confessor, and I'm just like, okay, well, I guess everybody's into Dami Mommy, so.
Yeah, I mean, the basic thing that I had about her was who is a villain that is doing things that is terrible, but does it because of, as if we have seen in a lot of religious oppression, because they feel like they have a sense of savior, a savior complex, right? They have the sense that they are doing something that is right, but they're willing to do anything to get there. And the levels of hypocrisy and the levels of violence, that's all kind of couched in this gentleness, this like idea of, I describe her as like the shepherd that is willing to manipulate and to conversate and to torture and to do everything to purify the vineyard. And I think it's something that echoes for a lot of people. The idea that someone can come in thinking that they have good intentions for you, but ultimately has their own self-interest in mind. So yeah, she was a very fun and interesting character to write. And, people, the rest of the team has done an amazing job with her and taking her into, the mechanics and taking her into this adventure. And I'm glad that it's resonating with people.
I think a lot of that came through super clearly on the in the first encounter in the Tower of Atonement. Like, you enter the tower, and the tower's dark and spooky, and then the confessor arrives, and the what's the word I'm looking for? The text lines that are provided in the adventure, the box text, yes. I'm not used to box text also including like examples of speech for NPCs, which great idea, by the way. Yeah, like that conveys the character very well, and Ken, I think it hits on the points you mentioned, the hypocrisy, the savior complex, all of that. And it feels very clearly like the confessor wants something from you. They want you to confess your secrets, and they're speaking to you very gently and trying to be very nice. And also, you're in a dark room full of torture implements, so there's some threat there.
Yeah, and the thing is, she doesn't see it as a violence to use these things. She sees it as like, this is just another form of trying to create salvation. And what was really great about having the opportunity to write that kind of box text stuff was to emphasize that this is a villain who isn't going to just immediately be like, "Mwahaha, these are my evil plans for all the things that I will do to you." Like, she genuinely wants to have a conversation with the people that she is with, but it's always with that underlying self-motivation of, how do I purify you? How do I bring you into the fold? Not necessarily because she thinks she wants power, but at the end of the day, that is what it is. She wants power. She wants salvation. She wants to feel like she is important in that sense.
Yeah, I did want to point out, because you did mention the narrative text, the box text, Tyler. We do have that available for all of our NPCs. We have like these conversational starters. We're going to expand the amount that we have in each dossier, I believe. That'll be something that I'm working with each of the writers to do once we finish writing the rest of the book. We're about 2/3 done, or 2/3 turned in right now, and it's really something that we wanted to provide GMs just more tools to be able to use, because you might not use all of the options, but you can, if you miss on a couple and it doesn't really start a conversation or it doesn't really start a social interaction, you still have other things left to try.
Now I see we're joined by Matt Duckett, I believe.
Yeah, Matt, if you'd like to speak, we would love to have you introduce yourself and just talk a little bit about your work on the Vineyard.
Sure. Can you hear me? Am I coming through? Okay. I'm not at home right now, so I'm trying to find a quiet place to talk. I was just at a cafe doing some work. But yeah, basically I'm a freelance illustrator, and that's kind of what I'm doing here. So far I've done the Hilltop District Castle. I've done an image for the Rocks Bowl. I've just done a couple of really exciting locations, and I just keep waiting for the next briefs to come in, because there's just so much to illustrate.
Now, I haven't gotten to see a ton of the art yet. Like, I've seen the art of the Confessor, I've seen the art of the Siren, I've seen the art of Her Majesty. Friday, have you shared any of the art of like the setting or anything like that publicly yet?
Yeah, I haven't. So I'm going to do that right now for the people that are here. And if you're just listening, I suppose, then you can just go to our Kickstarter, because by the time you listen to this, you will see it. But right now I'm gonna pull up some of Matt's work first, since Matt's here. I'm going to pull up Hilltop first, and then I'll share my screen. And Hilltop is the affluent district within the city that you can add, and it's sort of a place where you can meet people that are well removed from these sort of hardships that are imposed in the rest of the city. The way that we've written some of the districts is that it's really structured like an oligarchy, and that is really represented by the individuals within Hilltop itself.
Let's see. Now, if I can give just a super brief visual description of what we're looking at. So it's this beautiful, ostentatious house, like on a cliffside. There's a waterfall right in front of it. There's birds flying around. It's sunny. It's nice. This looks like it could be like a vacation home or like a noble's estate or something cool like that. So yeah, that definitely feels removed. The Confessor, like that feels like a very different tone.
Different parts of town, yeah.
Yeah.
if I lived in a place that really sucked to live in and I had to look up at that every single day, I feel like I'd probably be building a bit of resentment as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Matt, did you want to talk about sort of your what you had figured out and discussed with the art director Elaine Ho about what you both had come to agreement, how this was going to look and everything like that? If you want to speak to that, if you're in like a position to.
Sure. Yeah. I guess the underlying principle was that it had to look, classical painting. We wanted to use those kind of color schemes, really warm, kind of rich yellows. I was kind of thinking as I was like finding sort of the camera angle, so to speak. I was trying to find like it had to be shot from below, I think, to really like drive home that majesty. I like the idea that we're looking over the waterfall just to go over the top with the setting. It's like you almost couldn't just go view this beautiful waterfall without seeing somebody's huge building just built on top of it, And we just, of course, wanted just a few people kind of very nicely dressed, kind of milling about. No real sense of urgency. It's just sort of that shiny castle on the hill sort of aspect.
Cool. I'm gonna flip us to the next one for the Rock Below painting. Did you want to speak to this, Matt?
Sure. Yeah, this is a great bit of storytelling. I had to sort of combine a massive dragon skeleton, these miners that are completely dwarfed by it and sort of their behavior, like what they're doing. And it was a bit like wrestling in the initial thumbnailing stage of like, how much do I reveal? This is sort of the moment when these miners discover this kind of gemstone, and they're precariously sitting underneath the remains of this ruby serpent. And so I wasn't sure how much to focus on either of those things. So I kind of thumbnailed it from just every angle I could think of. There was some where there was like, stalactites and stalagmites that turned out to be dragon teeth and stuff like that. But in the end, I just wanted enough of sort of a looming presence just outside of that torchlight, so that the dragon is present, but it's more like we, the viewers, are sort of in on the secret. Miners that are just distracted by having just unearthed some of these gemstones.
Yeah, looking at the art here, like the sense of scale feels massive. Like when I first looked at it, it's like, okay, it's miners in a tunnel. There's some stalagmites, and like those look really big, and some of them are kind of sideways, and like as you look at the picture, eventually you realize, oh yeah, that is an enormous skull. That is not a tunnel. Like,
I even flipped it. Originally, I had the dragon skull on the left, and I thought, well, if we're sort of reading it left to right, I kind of want that to be more the punchline than the setup.
Yeah, I think you hit that. Like the first thing that drew me in was the person right in the middle underneath the torch holding the gem. Even looking at it in the kind of small window on Discord, this is a cool piece. I like this.
Very evocative.
Yeah, and we have a lot of other art provided by Yorsi, who couldn't be here today. But we have a lot of portraits and sort of painter style art. I remember when I first reached out to Matt, I had found them actually they did like a piece of Critical Role fan art I saw on Twitter. And I reached out to Matt and I was like, hey, do you take freelance work? And we were trying to like capture some of these, at least, tempt some of these really awesome painters that we have in the community and tabletop. And Yorsi was another one of those people that I found who had done work on with Beth the Bard on She is the Ancient. And if you've seen the She is the Ancient cover on DM's Guild, it's like very captivating, just the way that she is looking at the camera, and that's something that I wanted to really recreate for our product here. Let me switch windows here. But like for Ashlyn Ravenna here, who's meant to be the head of the Vineyard, we wanted someone to have a very intense presence and someone that who like sort of commanded the space, in addition to some of the other lieutenants that we have, like the Confessor and the Siren.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe this is the character that's referred to as Her Majesty.
Their Majesty. So their gender.
Majesty. Thank you.
Yeah, they're gender fluid. So that we actually had a masculine and a feminine version of this character portrait done.
Okay, and are you going to use both in the adventure, or are we sticking with one of them?
Yeah, we are. Cool. So some of the preliminary sketches done by Matt, in fact, for some of the broader pieces that we're doing, like we're looking at doing like a before and after painting for we're calling it the Last Supper because it's sort of modeled after the Last Supper that Matt has already sketched for, and I'm really excited to potentially get to put that in the book. And it's a little bit of a spoiler. It's a stretch goal, but all of the lieutenants initially like signing their contracts, and then the afters when they're more opulent and they're more rich and they're more like corrupted by the vineyard. So there's like their most human form in the first one, and then their advancement through the vineyard in the second one.
So I think from what I have gotten to see so far, I believe the Siren was one of the early previews for the Vineyard, and she's depicted both in her living form and her undead form, so you can transition with that character there.
Yeah.
I have to imagine the transition for the other lieutenants similar.
For some of them, yeah. So the Siren is one of those that we wanted. This was back before I had the wonderfully illustrious and incredibly great at everything Elaine Ho doing our art direction. So I was just kind of fixated on, well, who do I want? Because this is a character written by Sarah Madsen, and I was thinking, who would I like to represent this sort of character? So I came with like a rough character like sort of inspiration little mood board, and we found a plus size model that we based the Siren on. And we kind of went from there, and Elaine sort of like brought that home and sort of made sure that the Siren was looking as beautiful and as ghastly as we wanted her to look in her two forms.
Terrifying.
I don't know. It looks like a friend.
Well, one of them does.
Listen, looks dateable is the real statement here.
I mean, she doesn't look like she's a bottom, I would say. You know what I mean? Like.
So, Friday, you mentioned that you've run the Confessor scenario, I think you said 7 times now?
Yeah.
So how has that gone so far? You mentioned that people like the Confessor. Like, are people usually choosing to fight her, or people playing along? Like, how's that playing out so far?
People come in, and initially, like, the whole encounter with the Confessor is really meant to be more of a social encounter. As I've run it, I've kind of forced the combat encounter at the end with the NPC, but you have the choice to do that or not as the GM, and how Roos reacts, because Roos is the one that's summoned to the Tower of Atonement. And if you choose to like not engage the party or whatever and just run them through the rest of the tower, that's a perfectly acceptable option as well if the party really would be against fighting the Confessor, and you know that as a GM. So I do it because I need to playtest it, so they have to fight the Confessor. But normally, like, there's that social interaction, and there's that like, and I found that maybe about half of the characters will actually willingly give up their secret because they don't want to fight the Confessor, because they get the big bad vibes from her. So
now, are you playing the theme music when you run the encounter?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, I am playing the theme music. So I actually do. And, Nat developed this wonderful lair action called I Speak. And after I say, I use the Confessor voice, and I say the title of it, I say I speak, and then I turn the music off, and then I describe the silence in the tower. So there's a lot of stuff that I found that I'm really excited about integrating music and ambience and things like that into the whole Vineyard experience for people to really enjoy.
To add just a small clarification, I didn't design that lair action whole cloth, but when I came to it was just a normal silence spell, and I added that the Confessor could still like act and speak through it and still be heard.
VJ in that.
Yeah, being able to speak through it really adds to the arrogance.
Yeah, I think that captures it pretty nicely. Like, adds to the arrogance, the savior complex. Like, I am clearly more important than you people.
Yeah, I just really wanted to like uplift that being added to it, Nat, because I went back and saw it, and it was just like, man, that is such a great idea, because I feel like I might have had the thread there, but I didn't follow it down the line far enough. Like, I was like, okay, like, just kind of like the silence kind of situation. Like, I could imagine a religious figure that is that arrogant and just telling everybody to shut the hell up and them having to listen, but that extra thread of it, of allowing her to speak as well throughout all of it, just pulled the whole thing together.
That was actually something that partially came from serendipitous, partially came from playtest, actually. Well, there was this lovely confluence moment where I was going over some of the editing, and I was looking at more modern lair action write-ups, and realized that now, when they do them, they give the lair actions names when they used to not. So I'm going through and naming the lair actions, and Friday at the same time happens to be running a playtest. And Friday's like, wait, we made her auto-attack a spell. but her lair action makes silence, so she can't auto attack when she lair actions, which is why we playtest, finding out things like that. That's exactly what we're trying to hope for. And it was just perfect confluence to be like, oh, I know exactly what this should be called. I know exactly what this should do. So it was really like a collective stroke of luck and collective effort.
Yeah, and as far as, and I have the Confessor's portrait art done by the wonderful Yorsi up now, but yeah, I think that a lot of the interactions that the Confessor has are sort of interesting in that there's a lot of subversive actions that occur through the mechanics that cause the party each round of combat to reevaluate everything. And those lair actions do a really good job of making everyone reevaluate, like, what can I do? And is this going to be effective? And like, what should I do? Because every lair action is so fundamentally different in the Confessor, and then her actions and her reactions and the way like her legendary resistance works, that we don't use legendary resistance. We use something slightly different. It's just she damages herself. She flagellates herself with a cat of nine tails instead of failing anything. But yeah, there's a lot of fun interactions that I found. I've been having a lot of fun running the Confessor and casting Blade Barrier turn 1, and just walking up to people and just waiting for them to, forcing them to enter the Blade Barrier in a lot of cases, and get that damage. And it's like I just did that to the last party I ran today, and I basically just like crippled their whole party in the first turn. But I mean, like, there's a lot of nasty stuff, and there's a lot of interesting interactions with the spells and the reactions that the team has created here, the designers. So it's a very fun stat block to run.
My favorite dirty little trick is it's a little unassuming. It's easy for a GM to miss, unfortunately. Is use a use a legendary action to cast the at-will spell Dissonant Whispers. And then when they run away, that lets her opportunity attack with a spell using Divine Providence. So it's like, legendary action, Dissonant Whispers, run away.
And the mythic actions are also, I popped that on a couple of parties that ended up reaching the second form of the Confessor, and those were barn burners. But they're kind of meant to be. The Confessor is written as a CR 21. You're not meant to probably fight her and win at level 11. So this is, in a lot of ways, I think, meant to be a narrative introduction to the Confessor for a lot of tables, and then eventually, like, you can work up to fighting and beating her at some point eventually.
And I think the mythic action, the mythic structure works extremely well for the structure we have her, for the role we have her playing in this adventure structure where you fight her, but you're not supposed to beat her. So it sets a cutoff point where the party is like, we're striving so hard, we're working so hard. Oh, and now we popped her second half and now she's stronger? Okay, maybe we're in over our heads. It sends a signal when normally it's hard to get the players to choose their moment to turn and run.
And it's definitely up to whatever GM how they'd like to run the Confessor as far as that goes and how far they go. But I think a lot of the inherent motivations of the Confessor really limit her to, like, she's gonna get some secrets, then she's got shit to do. Like, she's got other appointments, and she pieces out after a little while. And I actually put it in bold red in our layout. I don't know how it's gonna come out in layout. We're almost done with layout. But I'm probably gonna ask for it to be left in bold red. Like, the Confessor is not trying to kill the party. For that reason, it's just meant to set the scene, if you will, for play with the Vineyard.
Now, have you considered adding like notes on the tactics with the stat blocks? Like the Confessor, especially, the stat block is pretty complicated. There's a lot of buttons to press, and there's a lot of interactions that might not be immediately obvious to dungeon masters. So have you considered adding tips on how to run the stat block?
That's a really good suggestion. I had not considered that, but now I'm considering it. So yes.
It's something I've put a little bit of thought into, because a little bit of tactical advice, particularly for newer GMs at high level. Because like, who doesn't go, oh, let's try a level 21 shot, and then you realize how much harder it is to do everything at level 20. But at this stage where we're at, that would be something that if we added would have to be in the full release, not for the playtest packet for the Kickstarter. Yeah.
Considering the playtest comes out tomorrow, it would be a little difficult to ask for changes at this stage.
Yeah, we're definitely we're gonna be altering things to perhaps add a little bit more. There's some things that I didn't have quite enough time in my writing to add more to in some of the levels in the Tower of Atonement that I'm interested in adding more options, because I do want to provide a breadth of options for each of the Tower of Floors. As written, the Tower of Atonement is probably a 2-session thing, where like just the Confessor part is like one whole session, and then the rest of the tower is another whole session. But I'm considering perhaps like just adding some more encounters and or content for people to interact with on each tower. Right now, it's kind of it's just meant to like fit like in 2 separate one-shots pretty much right now. So
would it make sense to stop and talk a little bit about the timeline for the Kickstarter and for the product?
Yeah, sure. What questions do you have about that?
What's the timeline for the Kickstarter and the product? No, I'm kidding, of course. But yeah, on what time frame? So the Kickstarter starts very soon.
Yeah, April 3rd at 8 a.m. Pacific, and then it will be done at May 1st midnight. So both Mondays. So you get the 2 months in case you want to wait for the next payday or you want to hit us on the back end in order to commit. I will say that in the first 24 hours, we have early bird specials in which you're going to save a ton of money for yourself, and you're going to get a lot more for your dollar. Any little bit helps though, so I don't necessarily want you to have to wait until the second day. That'd be good if you have pledged in the first 24 hours, to be quite honest. But yeah.
Awesome. And then from there, do you have a timeline for the product? Like when will folks get get copies digitally in hand? When will folks get copies in hand in general?
So that's an ambiguous question that I'm going to give you an ambiguous answer that I cannot necessarily pinpoint, because we are going to be around the same timeline as Project Black Flag, and they have not announced their dates. So, but we are thinking no later than April of next year, just 1 year from today. We're hoping to do it sooner. It really just depends on when we can make it work with Kobo Press and the release of their core book for Project Black Flag, because our book is going to be compatible with both, and we want to make sure that we hit everything that they're going to be including, and then also make good design decisions to include both.
Cool. All right. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Let's see. So we've talked about the Tower of Atonement as the kind of demo adventure that's dropping with the Kickstarter. For people who haven't read it already, which I'm going to assume is going to be most of the people listening to this later, what are they getting in that preview adventure?
So the preview adventure is set up to be sort of a just pick it up and use it. You're going to want to read the dossier of the Confessor written by our wonderful Kiana Shaw here. That's up front on the packet. The packet is going to be, I believe, 36 pages, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. It's going to include about 30 pages of content, and then about 5. It's going to have 5 VTT maps and an exterior piece of art for the tower itself. We are also posting within the Kickstarter page the Confessor theme song and the Confessor battle track done by Dungeon Dad. If you watch Dungeon Dad on YouTube, who does some D&D type videos, it's under his YouTube Chill Touch. But yeah, he's our composer for the project. So you're getting that, and then there's the adventure itself. And the stat blocks and the layers and everything to go with that. We are having tokens made. They didn't quite meet the timeline for the release though, but we will have tokens for all of the enemies. And we're going to be adding more art to this part of the book for the final product. But I just honestly couldn't afford to do more art for this part of the product at this point.
And one more thing. Also, sorry, my power died, so if I sound way worse now, I'm sorry. I'm on phone now. There's also 2 magic items, just to toss it out there.
The 2 magic items, they're pretty cool.
I can talk about those a little bit. So Friday, are we planning on potentially doing more as a stretch goal?
I think, yeah, I mean, I think I'm open to like more stuff. It really just depends on where we end up. So maybe is my official answer.
Okay, maybe answer the one. So when in the when we were conceptualizing the Guardian of Greed, which was a lot of fun. I love all I could think about when making it was the lair, at least, when you that part in Aladdin when they get into like the genie, not the genie's hoard, inside of the huge mountain of like gold and treasure and whatnot. And I was like, man, that is such a fun, like wild scene to look on. Like I remember looking at it as a kid and was just like my eyes bugging out and just like, wow, that's a lot of stuff. And just imagining the players having the same reaction. We were trying to figure out how do we entice the players into like taking things and whatnot. And when it comes to like enticing players to do things, I'm a big fan of like, at least in my home games where I know my players a little bit better, just putting these very individualized things that like, oh, I know that you want like your greatest wish in the world is to find this like little powerful little Nothic eye or something. So I'm just going to dangle this in front of your face as much as possible. And so in designing these two things, it was like, okay, there are a lot of like magic items that are kind of, what's the word? They're useful for regardless of what class you're in. So like +1 armor of different types can be good for wizards, warlocks, like anybody that can actually, especially if it allows them to wear the armor. But it was very much like I really wanted them to be like if you have a rogue in the party and you put this in front of their face, they can clearly see, oh, this is for me. Or if you have a rogue and a fighter and maybe it turns into a situation of which one of us is going to get it, and like enhances kind of like that greed motivator right there. But the two items in and of themselves are generic enough so that any like martial class for the warrior based one can pick it up and use it and it be very useful. And same with the wand. Although if we do get to do more, I really want to like dig into making more class specific ones that like potentially play off of different class abilities for people and whatnot, not just like the generic, oh, here's a wizard one because it gives you a couple of spells. No, this empowers your like arcane recovery or something.
That definitely feels on theme for the Guardian of Greed. So where does the Tower of Atonement fit into the broader adventure? Like the demo adventure is being published as kind of a preview for the Kickstarter. In the full product, is this going to be like the intro to the setting? Is this going to be somewhere in the middle? Like where does it fit?
So typically most parties don't start at tier 3. So this is a tier 3 adventure, so 11 to 15. And we sort of wanted to represent the adventure that was going to be the most striking to like sort of be a very good motivator for like the rest of play, because we find that most parties, when they have a setting book, they'll take it all the way to like level 9, level 10. I've run out of stuff to do. So we wanted to provide something for like the next level, and providing that sort of opportunity for a party to interact with directly and engage with perhaps negatively with the Confessor was really important to the team. For our sort of setup in our setting book, we do not have any other adventures in the initial Vineyard RPG written. It's all going to be scenario hooks and plot hooks and tools, stat blocks, lairs that are going to be available for people to use. Because of scope, I had to split off all the other adventures that we have planned to a separate Kickstarter. So that'll be another project that we are looking at doing in the near future. But yeah, so for right now, it is the only official like adventure, but you should have all of the tools available within the setting book to craft more adventures, just based on all of the various things we can provide you mechanically and narratively.
Also, small note here, but might be a tier 3 adventure, but I would comfortably run this for a party of level 7s if my table was like I knew them well and they were optimized. Like they could do it. I believe in them.
I would crush them, Nat. I would crush them so hard. I've been destroying these level 11 parties.
Yeah, but Friday, all your players are like, foppish role players. I love that.
Oh,
but,
wow. Wow. What is this slander? What is this slander?
We talk about this every week because of the way I advertise. I get all the grognards. Because of the way you advertise, you get all the role players and the people who know how to have fun.
Foppish people are more fun, okay?
They are. I would rather have your players than mine.
Hey, don't let your players listen to this.
I've got to say, looking at the stat block for the Confessor, I don't know if a level 7 party point still last very long against the Confessor.
You got to remember that that's a fight that they can lose. So the only fight that they have to do are against the Guardians. That's a fight they can actually avoid entirely.
Yeah.
So I'm not thinking about a party that can beat the Confessor. I'm thinking about, you got your sharpshooter, battle master, and you got your chronergy wizard. Like, can they beat the Guardians of Greed, Wrath, and Lust? And like, yeah, they can, particularly if they're like a party of 6 or 7.
Yeah,
I'd buy that.
There's a few limitations I would say on the Guardians as opposed to the Confessor, because they do have lair actions, but none of them have like big beefy like legendary resistance to burn through. I think one has, if I remember correctly, I haven't looked at the stat block in a little bit, but one of them has some semblance of that, but it's not like nearly as powerful. So there's some limitations to the other Guardians that you can potentially work through, like Nat was saying, for sure.
Yeah, they're not built like solos the same way the Confessor is. You can leverage overwhelming them with action economy in a way that you can't with the Confessor.
Yeah, unless the Confessor overwhelms their hearts, you know what I mean? Like they're just
Yeah, I mean, and like also it would be a dangerous adventure, because if the party gets a little foolhardy and goes, yeah, we can take her down, and then they drop everything in the Confessor, and then she regains all her 300 hit points and casts harm on all of them, and then they crawl away with their tails between their legs, then they probably don't have the gas in the tank to do the rest of it. But you can signal those things as a DM if you know your players.
Yeah, and I think Persona is probably the only one like that might be able to, like, still talking on the, like, a group of optimized 7th level players could probably take on these Guardians. I think Persona is the only one that's got kind of like that that has like the blurred visage, which just gives disadvantage on all attacks. So has a little bit of that going on, but like that only does so much, right? Too, like, eventually the overwhelming numbers will overwhelm them.
Also, notably, Persona is the only one that you can theoretically sneak past. The other twos have like senses that'll beat something like invisibility, but you get some good stealth checks. You can sneak past Persona.
yeah.
All the players out there, write that down.
No, we've been rumbled.
You've exposed us. So I did want to bring Dave back in and just formulate a question to sort of help answer as well about forming campaigns. And one of the things that me and Dave worked on was the history of the Vineyard, and sort of including these events and these rumor charts and these it's a storied history with the Vineyard, and you only have to include so much, some of which you can create a campaign out of. If Dave, you want to talk about a couple of the plot seeds that you have written for us.
Sure, yeah. It was interesting because you were talking about, like the ability to just lift stuff out of the book for the book to be useful for any level of like sort of user involvement. And that was a big challenge when I was asked to write some of the sort of the history of the Vineyard. Is like, oh yeah, I can do lots of big background text. I can write paragraphs and paragraphs that will go at the start of the book, which players will probably just skip past. But no, the brief I got given was, you got to give every page, every paragraph needs to be something that can be used on its own. It can be a resource that can be lifted out and then put to use by a ill-prepared DM such as myself. I'm quite used to that situation where I'm like, oh crap, I've got a session later on, I need to find a good hook. And so having everything be a hook or be something that could be put forward really did shape the way that I approached it. And it did come up with trying to come up with certain events from the history of the Vineyard that could be used to build a campaign around, or just a single adventure. For example, there was some stuff about how the Vineyard were trying to monopolize on necromancy, trying to spread distrust and fear of the use of that particular school of magic. And one particular way that they brought that about is by sort of creating debased forms of undead, such as ghouls, and just leaking out just a little bit of the knowledge about how to create, how to imbue ghouldom or raise the dead. Just the right amount of knowledge in untrained necromancers to create horrible outbreaks and plagues of these flesh-eating monstrosities that would obviously strike fear into the hearts of the people in the lower levels of the city who would have to deal with them. And then who comes out of the shadows with the solution to the whole problem? The Vineyard, of course. And these sort of patterns done in such a way as to be accessible to a start, beginning, and an end, can be lifted out of the history and then placed into the hands of the DM and used to sort of drive a.
Now, have any of you tried using characters from the Vineyard in like a published campaign or something? Since the villains are built to be used independent of the vineyard itself. Like, have you dropped it into another game?
I have. I've used the Siren for one shots. Great for that. The dossiers actually kind of function as one shots if you want them to, or a larger campaign. So everything within the dossier, which is anywhere from like 5 to 10 pages, depending on which one you're looking at, will have these sort of central tension ideas and these situation hooks. And for the Siren in particular, some of their hooks are revolving around the fact that they're a collector for the vineyard. So you can easily set up a scenario where the party is invited to one of the shows of the Siren, and then the Siren reaps them, and that's how they meet the Siren. And then they're just in this crowd of people who all owe debts to the vineyard, and then that's the start of the adventure right there. So there's a lot of stuff that we plan to, like Dave said, like you look at it, you can just quickly, like within an hour or two of prep, perhaps, for like some of the more complicated stuff, really just form the entire session. And then if the players enjoy it, then you just continue. You just keep working on the additional tools that you'll find within the stuff available. A lot of our villains are set up to be introduced in a way that's not going to be deadly to the party at first, so that they will interact with that person again. So a lot of the villains are looking to collect for the vineyard, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the party the first time. It could be somebody else, and they can just witness that, or they can hear rumors about this lieutenant and such, and then go from there.
So I've put them in my game, but not in a place where the players have run into them yet. I run this Curse of Strahd / She is the Ancient meets Spelljammer campaign, and like the actual BBEG that they're going to have to get rid of at some point to get out of this Spelljammer domain of dread. It's just kind of playing with her food and just kind of hanging out, and there are other powers growing stronger in this domain that she like knows exist. She's like, I don't really care, kind of on that apathy level of things, that the players will soon, quote unquote, soon get to interact with like all of the vineyard people. And so that being said, have scaled them down slightly for when they meet them, since they're not quite at that like all powerful place yet. But I'm really excited the second the players get to like interact with any of these guys.
I'm really excited about a Strahd campaign with these villains in it, because these villains are perfect for a Strahd campaign. And I say that as someone who has run 10 campaigns of Strahd last year. And I will never again. However, they're really good for Strahd.
I also have I pulled one of the Guardian stat blocks because I had a millionaire capitalist Guardian agreed too perfect not to a little play testing in with. But that was just a small little cameo.
Could you say that again? Because you just cut out for all of the information in that sentence.
Sorry, things are hairy on this end. I should probably stop trying to talk. But I took the Guardian Agreed in to guard the horde of my billionaire capitalist villain in one of my campaigns, and it gave us a little bit of playtesting fun. It was nice. Couldn't really resist.
So we've talked about a bunch of the lieutenants. We've talked about the Siren, the Confessor. Are we allowed to know the names of the other ones, or are those being kept hush hush?
Yeah, I think it's okay to know. Let me and some of these might change. I'm not at liberty to say some of them because they're still being developed, but let me pull it up real quick because I foolishly did not have it open. Here we go. So we have Ashlyn, the Confessor. We have the Solicitor General. The Solicitor General is on our cover art. You'll see it's the person as you're looking at it on the far right, to the left of Ashlyn. That cover art, I guess I'll share right here. Let me share screen real quick while I'm talking about this. Boop, boop, boop. And you'll see the cover art on the Kickstarter page for those listening. Yeah, we have the Confessor here on the left, and then we have Ashlyn Ravenna, and then we have the Solicitor General. The Solicitor General is the person that essentially does all the negotiation for the contracts and stuff, and is like kind of the boss who sends out their minions to like make deals and stuff and keeps track of everyone's debts. So he's the negotiator for the vineyard. The party may or may not encounter the Solicitor General, but is also one of those like sort of high-ranking people within the vineyard. You can tell because he's mostly undead, but
just mostly undead.
Yeah. I won't talk about it. Well, I mean, like the thing that we've said in a previous AMA, which is I think okay to share. One of the cool things about one of his mechanics that we had devised sort of conceptually was that he's going to be able to declare a law and that law must be obeyed. So he could say, for instance, no weapon shall cut me, and therefore all slashing weapons will not have effect that day. So then players have to kind of work around that, because with the way that we have the contract system, we are sort of presenting like, hey, this is very constricting. There's obviously a big cost for whatever you wrote the contract for, whether it be it had been like you wanted diamonds and you needed resurrection diamonds or whatever, and then or you wanted money, or you owed the Vineyard a debt, so they make you sign a contract, or they kind of encourage you to sign a contract to owe them something. We want there to be a way to slip out if you're good at weaseling away. But then also we want there to be like, you gotta kind of figure it out. And we're developing a section for the contracts that's going to allow people to develop their own. We're going to provide boilerplate contracts for everyone. Legal Kimchi and I are going to write the section of like, hey, here's how you develop contracts, and here's your considerations as a GM when you develop these for your players, because we want these to be easy enough for a GM to think about it for a little while, and then be able to write contracts for each individual situation that can be fun, but then also a little bit oppressive, but not so oppressive that they're gonna like, it's just not gonna be fun for the party to play anymore. And you got to provide a loophole as well, and that'll be part of like our section on how we're figuring out like you have to have at least one known loophole on your end. Maybe the players find another loophole that you'll adjudicate as a good loophole. So I got on a tangent. You wanted to know about other lieutenants. That was Solicitor General. We have Verity Fiducia, written by Sebastian Yue. And Verity is the editor-in-chief of The Grapevine, which is the propaganda newspaper of the Vineyard. So yeah, they're super cool, and I'm super excited for them to be read about and to be experienced at the table. We have The Prowler, written by our wonderful Dave here. We talked about that a little briefly. We have The Surgeon, also known as The Arms Dealer. The Surgeon is written by Chelsea Dot Steverson. Little Red Dot works for Kobold Press as their marketing director right now. And the Surgeon is someone who has a double identity, and they work against the Vineyard a little bit. They are sort of there because they had their arm twisted, or essentially the Vineyard had leverage on them. So they begrudgingly work for the Vineyard. And that's the case of some of these lieutenants. No one is as, I guess, stalwart and loyal as the Confessor and the Solicitor General. Everyone else on their roster has like their own motivations and may be swayed to either join the party or have a different interaction than just like going up to stomp the party. In the Surgeon's case, this is a person who interacts with the dark market a lot, which is a free trade area. It functions much like a black market in real life, and they trade diamonds that are not authorized by the Vineyard, so they're a natural enemy of the Vineyard. And what the Surgeon does is, it's sort of like a mixture of a few different things, but one of the major inspirations was the Ripper Docs in Cyberpunk. What they do is they remove limbs that have been infected with what we call the wasting sickness, the rot, and that is the cosmic horror of space, but it is beneath the city within the guts. The guts are a subterranean location underneath the city that is filled with magical darkness and also very magical dangers. And it also has a lot of treasures in it as well, so a lot of ancient artifacts and things like that. But there's also the danger of like this sort of like wasting sickness that will change your character fundamentally.
I think you've talked about the arms dealer in the dark market on Dollars and Dragons a couple of times. If I remember correctly, isn't there like there's some mechanic around the rotted limbs actually being weaponized in some way?
Yes, so that is why the Surgeon is also called the arms dealer, because they literally deal in arms that have wasting sickness in them, that have some magical property. And you can, if you would like, sort of outfit yourself with limb replacements that have like sort of magical properties, and they do come with a cost. Harnessing the shadow points, as we're going to have like this system where it's a give and take between the GM, and every time you try and harness shadow points or harness the wasting sickness or from the rot, you are going to be essentially like building up your successes on your end, but then you're giving the GM dice to do stuff with.
Interesting. And Like what would be the benefits to a player for one of these arms, just as an example?
So it's going to be a powerful magical attack or ability or skill or something like that. And the downside is that you're attracting more of the rot into your location, and you're infecting the location and potentially bringing very present dangers into the scenario.
So it sounds like all right, try that again. So how many lieutenants are there? We've gone Confessor, the Solicitor General. We've talked about the Siren, the Surgeon / arms dealer. So there's 4 there. Like, what's the total count?
So there's going to be Ashlyn, and then there's going to be 8 lieutenants, and then we'll probably add more for the next book. So,
all right,
yeah.
So so you're already planning book number 2.
Yeah. My co-creator is Kiana Shaw.
All right.
Say hi, Kiana.
Hello again. Yeah. So Friday and I have been discussing the second book. So that should be a fun thing, hopefully.
Yeah, we're looking at an adventure book just because we wanted the core book to sort of stand on its own and be useful to people. And then the next thing is that if you have a core audience who really likes what you have out there, then the natural consequence is like, let's make an adventure book. And me and Kiana are sort of discussing it right now, but obviously we need to get through this Kickstarter with everyone's support first, and then we can look at budgeting for the adventure book in the near future.
All right, so I'm going to ask kind of a silly question on this one. So the book is called The Vineyard. The organization is called The Vineyard. Is there an actual vineyard? Like any winemaking in here? What's up?
No. Some of the interesting magical items and other things written by Megan Garner of Describe, our partner for some of our narrative text that we're going to be adding to the book, actually does involve wine. But I won't spoil that. You can go to describe.com and look at the Vineyard collection to see that. So there is officially no vineyard. The vineyard itself is sort of, I'm not sure what you would call that. Isn't it an allegory? They harvest people.
Now, do they call themselves the Vineyard?
That's how they're known, yeah.
So they came up with this name in world, presumably because they harvest people. All right. So we've kind of danced around it a little bit. What can you tell us about...
I got a pause from you, Tyler. You cut off there.
So we've danced around this one a little bit, but what can you tell us about their majesty?
So Ashlyn Ravenna is something that I started thinking about right when I was like about to come out, I think. To be quite honest, I was thinking about what's the most trans character that I could play, or I could play. I was the GM. This was from my setting, so I was interested in succubus and incubus lore. So Ashlyn Ravenna is someone that evolved in the guts, the magical darkness, and had encountered a bunch of people, mostly wizards, who were seeking lichdom. And a lot of them were beginning to trade their secrets with Ashlyn Ravenna. And after a certain amount of time, because of the amount of secrets that she was gathering, or they were gathering as a succubus and an incubus, they ended up sort of coalescing into the new cycle of the undead god of secrets. And that is who Ashlyn Ravenna is. So there's 2 fronts to Ashlyn Ravenna. There's the Ashlyn Ravenna that everybody hears rumors about, and then there's the Wandering Mother. And the Wandering Mother is more of like a figurehead of the Whisperborn themselves. Currently, as it works, whenever a secret is shared with a loyalist or someone who is able to collect a secret, that secret becomes a physical form, and the secret is wiped from the memory of the person who told it. When the Confessor takes secrets, and if you've looked at the stat block, or not the stat block, but like the narrative tone, whenever the Confessor takes secrets, it just comes out on Celestial in like a piece of parchment. So that piece of parchment, that secret, when it's handed over to one of the clerics of the Whisperborn, of the Wandering Mother, you can place it into the bonfire in order to create another Whisperborn. And the Whisperborn is a lineage that you can play. It'll be a player option. And that's what the Confessor is. You'll see that she has the flame in the center of her chest, just like Whisperborn do.
So tell us a little bit more about the Whisperborn. So they're a new lineage. They're born from secrets. How does that affect them as a creature? Like you're born from a secret. Do you know the secret? Can you use the secret in any way?
Yeah, so the secret itself is basically the life force that sort of tethers together the Whisperborn. This was actually written by Kiana Shaw, who had to just step out, but like the Whisperborn were also conceived by Kiana Shaw, so shout out to Kiana. But basically, if the secret is ever spoken out loud and it no longer becomes a secret, then that Whisperborn is unraveled. And we're looking at some player options for resurrection and how there's just going to be maybe an additional step for Whisperborn in that regard, because it would be kind of perhaps just a little unfun if like we just erased your character on accident at a table or something like that. But I think that's a fun element of the mechanics that we can sort of embrace about secrets, in that there's both narrative and mechanical options that we're going to have for all secrets and not just for Whisperborn. The secrets are going to function in a way that we want to give them a wide breadth of opportunity for, and also leverage political power, currency. You can trade the Vineyard for secrets, that sort of thing. So, Nat, did you have something to say about that?
Oh yeah, so I did a mechanization for the Whisperborn for 5e before some things changed. So that was an interesting challenge to try to run at, because we were really strong on this idea, like, if this secret gets said somewhere, you die. But it did end up getting softened, at least in its current incarnation, a little bit, because now another player character can offer a new secret to replace it, to keep you alive. And they would forget that, whatever they share. So it's the opportunity to create this really dramatic roleplay moment, and also conveniently enable that character to not just die as a roleplay consequence. And in that scenario, that secret would take the place of a material component for a resurrection spell, or supplement it.
Now, do the secrets that create the Whisperborn have to meet any criteria? Could it be some like really, really small, mundane secret, like where I hide candy from my kids? Or does it have to be something serious?
I think for most of our secrets, we are focused on these sort of soft and sliding scale, and this is going to depend on your table. And this is totally up to the table. If you want to include petty secrets in your game, I mean, sometimes that can be fun. I can think of a lot of ways that could be fun. But the way that we're writing a lot of it is sort of focused on the more damaging secrets, let's call them, quote unquote damaging, because a lot of what the Vineyard as an RPG is centered around is political intrigue. And we want for secrets to be a fun plot element and not just something that's held against the players. We want players to be involved in the secrets and how plots are formed, and like being interested in finding out what a secret is. And that's what we're going to try and do when we formulate a lot of these mechanics around secrets. For the most part, we're going to have both narrative and mechanical options for secrets, and you can choose to use either. That's what we're really focused on, is like creating like those really dramatic political intrigue type secrets. And then if you want some like, just some funny light secrets, that's okay too. But that's not what we're going to focus putting in the book.
Yeah,
So giving up a secret to resurrect your friend might actually involve giving up like a mechanic you have, not just where you hide your candy from your kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like this idea of like mirroring the idea of confession, that I give up this secret, I lose it. And so if this is something that's been weighing on me, I can feel better about life because I've actually lost this thing that has been taken away from me, and is going to be used to create a Whisperborn. However, if it was something that treasured secret, something that was important to me, and it's still drawn for me, then I'm losing. I want to ask the question, how spicy is the secret that made the confessor?
It's the spiciest. It's the spiciest secret you've ever heard. There may or may not be in my mind I'm not gonna say.
Okay. Well, I'm excited.
There's
think
an adventure. There's an adventure I have planned for that. Actually, the Confessor's secret, but
I think we should do the like Eberron morning answer, where we have like a sidebar with like 4 or 5 different rumors.
Yeah.
And not have a canonical answer.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible too. I think sort of the beauty of it as well is like you can sort of flex on what's most fun for your table. And that's really what we're trying to do with this supplement, and providing a lot of the GM tools and also providing a lot of different options, is that no 2 tables play the same way. So if you are more interested in all the secrets except for the lust, then you can just not include those in the game. And then, you can play the way that you would like to play.
So I know in a lot of adventures and setting books and stuff like this, creators frequently like to consider one of the characters included as sort of a self-insert for themselves. Like Ed Greenwood famously goes by Elminster. Or, his Twitter handle is Elminster himself.
Mm-hmm.
So he sees Elminster as his own persona within the Forgotten Realms setting. Does everybody on the team have kind of a self-insert within the?
I mean, mine's wishful thinking, but obviously mine's Ashlyn Ravenna. Like,
It makes sense.
I'm not
As of
sure.
yet, I've
Sorry.
actually only done like developmental work on other people's designs. So as of yet, no.
And the stat blocks that I've worked on have been Ashlyn and the Confessor. I don't know. I guess no, not really.
Dave, did you want to be a fungus? Is that what you were gonna say?
I was saying I'm not sure if I've quite reached the heights of an undead sentient disease, but I'm working on it.
It's goals,
We all
right?
need goals. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a couple that we didn't talk about, that we didn't get too far into, because they're just still in the developmental stage, and we'll be completing them post Kickstarter. But Nordine Ali Kadir is developing an NPC, and as is Bashir Gauss.
For the record, I don't think Legal Kimchi would consider Solicitor General self-insert, just knowing him pretty well as a friend.
Yeah, I've been thinking about whether or not I'm asking Kimchi to do the voiceover for the Solicitor General, because I think he'd be perfect. He has that silky smooth YouTuber voice. So like, yeah, I think
please
it'd be
do.
great.
Please
I
do.
think
I
it'd be great.
have
Fired
I put
idea.
him on to fall asleep too sometimes.
So I think that might be a new tidbit. So you've talked about there's going to be a soundtrack. Is there going to be like voiceover stuff for the characters? So you can have voiced lines?
Yeah, so some of this stuff is hush hush. Don't post about it anywhere. But if you're listening to this AMA, you can know. Some of that stuff is stretch goals. So yeah, in order for me to afford to pay people properly, which is very important to my team, I would need to we need to bust some of these stretch goals in order to reach like the VO pack and the soundtrack. But yeah, these are things that we've already done some work towards, and some of the people that we have lined up. I have for Ashlyn Ravenna, it is Gabe Hicks and Jasmine Bueller, and for the Confessor, it is Pooja. I don't know how to pronounce her last name, or otherwise I would try. Do you know, VJ? No, sorry.
I do, and my brain was like, nope, I do, but I cannot.
Actually, fun fact, I found this out like a while ago, and I was just like, no fucking way. But actually, Pooja and Kimchi are related, like cousins or something. Like, yeah, I found that out like kind of after the fact, because it was weird. Like they kind of exist in the TTRPG and like separately, but very talented family.
Well, I think I've been monopolizing a lot of the questions. Folks in the chat, if you have any questions, just put them in the voice chat and we'll call them out when you're ready. In the meantime, so the Solicitor General, I want to ask about that mechanic for like declaring a law and then that becomes truth for the day. Like Friday, I think the example you used was the Solicitor General could declare that they couldn't be cut and they'd become immune to slashing weapons. How far does that reach? Is that like a thing that they only do in fights, or could they wake up, no one's allowed to wear shoes?
That's a discussion for me and Nat to have. So while we're developing that, I know Nat knows about it conceptually, but we haven't quite wrangled how the mechanics are going to work. Do you have thoughts on that, Nat?
Yeah. It's actually funny because every time you mention it, I just kind of look at the sky and go, how am I going to write that? But my starting point is definitely Isperia, the Supreme Judge from the Ravnica, Guildmaster Guide to Ravnica book, has the ability where she can declare a type of action, like attack, cast a spell, use an object that the players cannot use. And I feel like that is the big brain kind of starting point to start to ground that in the mechanics. By the way, Ravnica and Eberron, those books have great monsters. If you're a GM, go loot them for other adventures.
Now, if I remember right, there's a first edition Pathfinder spell called Prohibition that does something similar. So, another place to steal inspiration from.
I will 100% look that up at some point.
He's not lying. Like he does. He has an encyclopedic knowledge of like books, and like Oh my gosh, it's ridiculous. It's like I can ask Nat like, "Hey, how does this ability work?" And then Nat like looks up for a minute and it's like, "Here's how it works because of this precedent set by this book written in 2017."
That is a useful skill.
I don't have the dates memorized, but like, yeah. I'm the kind of GM where like if a player is trying to look at their character sheet for what their bonus is on their attack roll, I'll just tell them because it's already lodged itself into my brain.
It's eerie. It's really eerie. It's frightening.
So I know a bunch of people on the team are also professional dungeon masters. I asked earlier if people had used characters from the Vineyard in other games. Are people looking forward to future games and seeing like, oh, I could use this character here? Does anybody already plans for something they could do with this?
For sure, I'm running Vineyard campaigns. Kind of as we get a little bit further into development, probably I'll start opening up a campaign or two for just Vineyard specific setting. Within the probably starting in May after we get done with the Kickstarter, I'm going to start doing that. And part of that is also for my writing, so that I can start to finish some of the writing for this book. Yeah, I definitely plan to integrate it. I think there's a lot of opportunity for people to integrate this into a Waterdeep campaign, especially. I think Waterdeep's almost perfect for this in any other big city.
I think at Barist, I tend to throw whatever monster I'm working on at my players in my pro games. Like I wrote all the elementals for MCDM's Fleet Mortals, which is coming out soon. And almost every single one of those, my particularly for some reason, my Sunday night Storm King's Thunder group has just fought because it's like, oh, I need an encounter. Oh, I'll use my Blaze Caster. Oh, I need an encounter. Ooh, the Iron Star Wart would be fun to try out. I just get excited to try the stuff I write. It's I know, and people tend to like it. So
I've been following some excellent advice that I got from a really famous and highly ranked pro DM about building your audience and then having people go wherever you go. And that has, I'm talking about Friday in case anybody can't pick that up. And that's been working out really well for me. I've gotten a bunch of people interested in playing in the homebrew setting I've been working on, and that I wish was a lot more done than it actually is. But as soon as I got brought onto the project, I was like, yep, this is getting dropped somewhere. This is going to be a whole little section of a whole big like political intrigue, kingmaker, all that kind of adventure thing. So I am looking forward to this being done, because while it's not going to be a Vineyard specific campaign, it is going to be a part of that like nation changing, world shifting kind of political intrigue game one of these days.
Well, isn't that just the beautiful thing about TTRPGs as a medium is, everybody can take their own version of it, and these are all just stories we're telling around a campfire, and they can all coexist and they can all clash in every single way, and it's all great.
Yeah, I absolutely, a lot of these are meant to like be plug and play. They're meant to be modular in that way. So for sure, if you see locations or mechanics or NPCs that you would like to use, these are really meant to stand alone. And wherever you put them, you can get enough from them. Even the setting itself is written as a nondescript city, and I say nondescript in the way that it doesn't even have a name, so that every reference is just the city within the book, and there's no name given to it, so that this thing can be modular to put into any existing campaign. And I think that's time for us, isn't it, Tyler?
It seems to be just about.
That was a lot of questions. Thank you for doing this. Thank you to everybody on the team who showed up for this. I'm sorry that it's 1:30 in England, Dave.
It's all right. It's great just to hear how things are going and stuff. Keep up to date.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Dave, and just shout out to Dave. Dave was the person who actually inspired me to become a GM many moons ago. I played with Dave in one form or another in role playing for I think it was probably over 10 years. And then I started playing with Dave in like these old OSR type games and these BX type old games, and I've like played games like Mothership with Dave. And yeah, Dave was definitely one of those instrumental people in me getting more interested in doing it myself. and it's just a really fantastic storyteller. And I just want to let you know, Dave, it's really been wonderful to have you on the project, and like to come full circle because of that you inspired me to do so much more with my path in life, and now it's really just great to work with you on this.
Oh man, I'm gonna cry. No, it's been wonderful to be involved and to take the skills that we both developed together in our shared pursuits. Those 10 years and everything, and put it to a way that helps make make something really cool and new and fantastic. And I'm really excited to see how it goes. I'm really glad I was able to play that part. I'm the first review on your pro GM profile, and I'll always have that.
Yeah. It's you'll always have that. No one can take that away from you, Dave. That's right.
All right. Well, folks listening at home, thanks for joining us. Folks in the chat, thanks for joining us too. We'll see y'all in the Kickstarter, I guess.
My power literally just came on. It literally only died for this call. That's fantastic.
Classic.